Chosen one, this message didn't find you by accident. God led you here for a reason. Heaven is interrupting your cycle today to deliver a divine instruction. This ends now, the delay, the confusion, the soul ties, the draining assignments, the misplaced loyalty. God is calling an end to everything that's been silently suffocating your anointing. You are too chosen, too marked, and too needed in this hour to stay in places that were never meant to contain you. God is not asking, He is commanding you to break free. This is your confirmation. You felt it. You've sensed the shift. You've outgrown the space, the people, the roles. Now, it's time to obey. Let's break this down into 7 powerful and prophetic chapters so you can see clearly why God is shutting this door and what He's preparing you for next. Before we dive deep, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, because this message isn't just content, it's a divine command. A prophetic word straight from the Spirit, sent to confirm what your heart already knows but your surroundings keep denying. This is your release notice. And to everyone who's been supporting through super thanks, God bless you richly. Your presence, your hunger, and your loyalty to truth don't go unnoticed. You're not just consuming words, you're walking in alignment. And for that, I'm truly grateful. If your spirit feels this frequency, type 77 in the comments right now. That number is not random, it's a heavenly signal, a spiritual code that says, I'm ready to release what's been draining me. I'm ready to walk in the fullness of my anointing. I'm ready for the shift that's already been spoken over my life. Not everyone will make it to the end of this word, only the truly chosen. Only those who are brave enough to obey the voice of God when He says, this ends now. Because what's coming next requires freedom. It requires separation. It requires you fully awake, fully yielded, and fully anointed. This message isn't just meant to inspire, it's meant to activate. So listen closely, and when your spirit leads, come back again, because every time you hear this, a new level of clarity and confirmation will rise within you. Let's get into the Word. Chapter 1, The weight of your anointing cannot fit in small places. Chosen one, the pressure you've been feeling lately, it's not coincidence. It's not confusion. It's confirmation. You're not uncomfortable because something's wrong with you, you're uncomfortable because your environment no longer matches your elevation. You've been trying to squeeze your divine assignment into limited spaces, into relationships, roles, routines, and responsibilities that were never meant to hold the weight of your oil. You've been trying to remain accessible in places God already closed the chapter on. And the spiritual discomfort you're experiencing is the tension between where you are and where you're called to be. That tension is the signal, it's heaven's way of saying this season is too tight for the size of your mantle. The frustration you're facing isn't failure, it's spiritual suffocation. You've grown beyond what's around you, but your faithfulness and loyalty have kept you tethered to places that can no longer nurture your next. Even the people you once aligned with now seem distant. That's not personal, that's prophetic. You're being pulled out because you've been set apart. Your anointing carries heavenly weight, it carries prophetic authority. You don't just carry favor, you carry assignment. You don't just carry talent, you carry territory. And anything that cannot recognize or respect what you carry will either try to reduce you, distract you, or delay you. There are certain rooms where your spirit cannot breathe anymore. Certain dynamics where your discernment is stifled. And the reason you're feeling more isolated isn't because you're failing. It's because God is isolating you for elevation. You've outgrown their limitations, their expectations, and their comfort zones. You were never designed to remain confined. That's why small-minded environments can no longer contain you. That's why certain doors are closing, not as punishment, but as protection. You've tried to explain yourself, stayed quiet to avoid offending others with your expansion. But no more shrinking to survive. No more dimming your divine identity to avoid making others uncomfortable. You were chosen. You were marked. And your anointing demands room. When David tried on Saul's armor, it didn't fit, not because David was weak, but because he was called to fight differently. And so are you. You're not called to wear what others wear. You're called to shift things, to lead, to rise. That's why your soul won't let you rest in a place that no longer fits. Because once you've tasted elevation, stagnation will always feel like suffocation. This is the divine warning and the divine release. Stop shrinking. Stop explaining. Stop staying stuck. God is saying, the anointing on your life is too weighty for small places. I'm calling you up. I'm calling you out, and I'm calling you forward. You are not who you were before. You've become too prophetic for shallow spaces, too expanded for old systems, too transformed for familiar cages. The lid is off. The room is shifting. And your release has been ordered. You're too anointed to stay beneath your level. You're too chosen to keep hiding your crown. Chapter 2, They loved your gift but feared your growth. Chosen one, let's tell the truth. Some of the people who celebrated you at your lowest level are now silent as God begins to lift you. They loved your presence when you were still figuring things out. They loved your gift when it served them. They clapped when you were accessible, struggling, and seeking validation. But the moment your oil began to mature, the energy shifted. They never expected your anointing to evolve. They never thought you'd start walking in authority. They liked you best when your crown was still crooked, when your voice was still timid, when you hadn't yet realized who you truly are. Now that you've started standing up, speaking out, discerning more, and walking heavier in your calling, their words got shorter, their energy got colder, and their hearts, though never pure, started showing their true motives. You stayed loyal even when their love became inconsistent. You made excuses for their sudden silence. You prayed for peace while they whispered in corners. You kept showing up even while they kept shrinking away from the version of you that God is revealing. But here's the divine truth, they didn't love you. They loved the version of you that didn't make them insecure. They didn't nurture your growth. They tolerated your gift as long as it stayed small. They were never sent to go with you, only to stand beside you at the start. Some people are only meant to witness the beginning of your journey, not the fulfillment. And the longer you hold on to expired attachments, the more you delay divine connections. You've been dragging old loyalties into new seasons, and it's weighing your spirit down. That emotional fatigue you're feeling isn't just from spiritual warfare, it's from spiritual misalignment. You keep praying for release, but God can't release you into fullness while you're still tethered to fragments. You can't rise while clinging to what's rooted in resentment. You can't carry the mantle and carry their comfort at the same time. You can't please both God and people who fear what He's doing in you. This is why the separation is happening. This is why the isolation feels divine. This is why certain doors aren't reopening, no matter how hard you knock, because God is closing the door for you to protect your future from being poisoned by the past. Let them distance themselves. Let them misunderstand. Let them call you changed. Because you've grown. You've awakened. You've aligned. And not everyone can digest the full version of you, the bold, obedient, Spirit-led version. God says, stop grieving their exit. Start preparing for your entrance. You are walking into a room that your old crowd couldn't handle. You are stepping into a stage that requires peace, not approval. You are evolving in a way that demands clarity, not compromise. Don't water yourself down to remain palatable to people who secretly hoped you'd stay small. They saw the future in you before you did, and that's why they tried to box you in. But this is the season of the unboxing. This is the chapter of the unveiling. This is the moment when God reveals not only who you are, but who never truly was for you. Chapter 3, Disobedience in delay is still disobedience. Chosen one, you already know what God told you. He whispered it in the quiet, confirmed it in signs, repeated it through people, dreams, and divine nudges. You didn't mishear him. You didn't imagine it. You just hesitated, not because you're rebellious, but because you're careful. Because you love deeply. Because you overthink everything. Because you were hoping the timing would feel more convenient. Because you didn't want to hurt anyone, disappoint anyone, or step into the unknown without full clarity. But here's the truth, the Spirit wants you to confront. Delayed obedience is still disobedience. You may not have said no to God with your words, but your inaction said it louder. You're not evil, you're just tired. You're not resistant, you're just afraid. But even so, the delay has now become a detour, and that detour has become a danger to your destiny. Every day you linger in a place God told you to leave, you lose ground in the place He already prepared. Every hour you spend second-guessing, you're forfeiting the divine acceleration He designed for your obedience. You're asking for confirmation, but God already gave you instruction. You're waiting for permission, but heaven already granted you the authority. You're hoping for signs, but the signs have been showing for months. God isn't asking you to understand everything, He's asking you to trust Him anyway. This is not about comfort, it's about covenant. It's not about ease, it's about obedience. It's not about timing, it's about alignment. There is territory with your name on it, but that door has a window, and if you miss the moment, it won't stay open forever. Yes, God is merciful. Yes, God is loving. Yes, God is patient. But He is also just, and He honors movement, not stagnation. There are blessings that only show up when you obey fully and quickly. You've cried, you've prayed, you've fasted, but the breakthrough is on the other side of your full yes, your fast yes, your faith yes. Don't let your love for people override your loyalty to God. Don't let your overthinking drown out your anointing. Don't let your logic rob you of your launch. You've been praying for God to shift things, but He's waiting for you to shift first. That relationship, that job, that city, that old mindset, if God already told you to release it, your delay is costing you more than you think. There are doors that will not wait until you feel ready. There are assignments that require urgency. There are people on the other side of your obedience who are suffering in the meantime. This isn't just about you, it's about your calling. It's about your legacy. It's about what heaven is trying to do through your life. You're at a divine crossroads, and the Spirit says clearly, this ends now, or the next door will pass you by. Obey while the oil is still flowing. Obey while the heavens are still open. Obey while your spirit is still sensitive. Because there will come a point when delay doesn't just slow you down, it shuts the door completely. You don't need more time. You don't need more signs. You don't need more people to agree. You need courage. You need faith. You need obedience. Chapter 4, Your anointing is activating new warfare. Chosen one, you've been feeling it, and you've been wondering what's going on, the pressure, the fatigue, the strange dreams, the sudden anxiety, the unexplained distractions, the people turning cold without reason, the heaviness that seems to hover even after you pray. You thought maybe you were off track. You thought maybe you were slipping. But here's the truth, you're not breaking down, you're breaking through. What you're feeling isn't failure, it's friction. It's spiritual resistance, because your anointing is disturbing old systems. This warfare didn't show up when you were playing small. It didn't chase you when you were silent and safe. But now that your obedience is becoming louder than your fear, now that your gifts are maturing, now that your authority is increasing, the spirit realm has taken notice. And hell is nervous. You see, the enemy doesn't attack what doesn't pose a threat. He doesn't waste resources on people who pose no real disruption to darkness. The pressure you're under is confirmation, not condemnation. It means your oil is working. Your prayers are reaching. Your alignment is dangerous. The warfare is a signal, you're closer to destiny than you've ever been. But with new levels come new devils. And with higher realms come heavier responsibilities. That's why the attacks feel stronger. That's why the warfare feels more personal. That's why your discernment feels more urgent. God is allowing this pressure not to break you, but to build you, to prepare you, to teach your hands to war, to sharpen your ears to His voice. Because where you're going, you can't afford to be distracted. You can't afford to be emotionally entangled. You can't afford to carry weak connections and outdated attachments. The enemy is strategic. He won't always come with horns and flames. Sometimes he comes through delays, through confusion, through people who feel good but pull you out of alignment. And God, in His mercy, is now cutting the cords. That's why certain relationships suddenly feel off. That's why people you once depended on are going silent. That's why certain doors are closing that you didn't even ask to shut. It's not rejection, it's divine protection. God is saying, I need you battle ready. I need you focused. I need you clean. I need you light. You cannot carry spiritual clutter into your next elevation. You cannot take emotional baggage into a divine battlefield. You cannot operate in full authority while still entangled with what drains your power. So don't be surprised if isolation increases. Don't be shocked if warfare intensifies. Don't be discouraged if you feel like you're standing alone, because God is setting you apart. He's refining your spirit. He's increasing your awareness. He's stretching your endurance. And most of all, He's drawing a line. This is the moment when heaven says, enough. This ends now. Enough of the cycles. Enough of the delays. Enough of the compromising. Enough of the false alignments. You've been marked for something greater, and you can no longer play with fire while asking God for favor. You've outgrown what once fed you. You've matured past what once satisfied you, and now your anointing is demanding discipline. Chapter 5, You're carrying a mission that requires separation. Chosen one, this won't be easy to hear, but it's necessary. There comes a moment in every divine journey when God whispers, come away, not to punish you, not to isolate you out of cruelty, but to preserve what He placed inside of you. What you're carrying is not ordinary. It's not common. It's not for everyone. It's sacred. Like Abraham, you've been told to leave your father's house even before you saw the full vision. Like Moses, you've been called into the wilderness, not to be forgotten, but to be forged. Like David, you're being pulled away from the crowd, not because you're unworthy, but because your crown isn't crafted in public. Separation always precedes elevation, always. You can't stay in the same rooms and expect your oil to multiply. You can't keep entertaining familiar spirits and expect divine clarity. You can't stay surrounded by people who only know your past and expect them to celebrate your prophetic future. Some people can't see you as anything beyond the version they're comfortable with. They love you as long as you play small. They cheer for you as long as your growth doesn't convict their stagnation. They're fine with you as long as you don't disturb the structure of their dysfunction. But the moment you start healing, evolving, hearing from God clearly, and walking in authority, they either start pulling back, or worse, they start pulling you back. God won't let that happen. He loves you too much to let false attachments define your identity. So, He's shaking the table. He's disturbing your comfort. He's allowing discomfort in the very places you once felt safe, not because He wants you lonely, but because He needs you aligned. Chosen one, consecration isn't optional when you're carrying something holy. You are pregnant with purpose, and just like a mother must adjust her diet, her pace, her surroundings, you too must adjust for the sake of what's forming inside of you. God is saying, this mission cannot be corrupted by comfort. This purpose cannot be diluted by opinion. This oil cannot be shared with just anybody. That's why He's pulling you into silence, into solitude, into stillness, not to make you invisible, but to make you undeniable when the time comes. Don't confuse divine separation with rejection. You're not being left out, you're being set apart. You're not crazy for feeling like you don't belong anymore. You've outgrown the circle. You've outgrown the conversation. You've outgrown the emotional habits that once felt normal. God is untangling you from people and places that were never meant to go with you into your next. And yes, it will hurt. Yes, you will grieve some losses. Yes, it may feel unfair. But hear this in the Spirit, the pain of separation is far lighter than the cost of disobedience. You cannot delay your destiny for the sake of maintaining old versions of peace. You cannot forfeit your prophetic path to keep the approval of those who never saw your full potential anyway. God has called you out so He can call you up. The calling on your life isn't just for you, it's generational, it's transformational, it's eternal. And that level of impact requires separation. So don't resist it. Chapter 6. Your next season requires a new you. Chosen one, this next season isn't just a shift in circumstances, it's a shift in identity. This isn't just about a new job, a new city, a new relationship, or even a new blessing. This is about a true new version of you finally stepping forward, a version that's been buried under pain, fear, cycles, and conditioning for far too long. Heaven is calling for your becoming, and God is serious about your transformation. You've been asking for breakthrough, for elevation, for acceleration, but God is asking you for something deeper, a higher version of you. Not a perfect version, not a filtered version, but the healed, whole, undistracted, bold, obedient, God-aligned version of who He created before the world knew your name. What's coming is too big for the you who still doubts, too sacred for the you who still self-sabotages, too prophetic for the you who still needs validation to move. You can't carry childhood wounds into a promised land. You can't carry unhealed trauma into a divine assignment. You can't carry small thinking into global impact. And you know this. That's why you've outgrown conversations, spaces, mindsets, even your own behaviors. That's not just maturity, that's your mantle waking up. Chosen one, what you're stepping into isn't just a new season, it's a new responsibility. This is your prophetic fulfillment season. This is the chapter where all the delays make sense, where all the crushing has purpose, where all the waiting starts to unfold into why God kept you hidden for so long. But to walk into that future, the old version of you must die, the version that shrinks when your light begins to attract attention, the version that delays obedience because of overthinking, the version that over-explains spiritual decisions to carnal minds. That version cannot cross over with you. You've dreamed your next level. You've prayed about it. You've prophesied it. But now God is saying, it's time to become it. The people, platforms, and provision you're meant to impact are waiting, but they're assigned to the you that's healed, whole, fearless in obedience, and aligned without compromise. You don't need to reinvent yourself, you need to return to who God originally created you to be. Chosen one, it's time to release the survival version of you, the version that got you through the trauma and betrayal. That version did its job, but it's no longer needed in this next chapter. What's needed now is clarity. What's needed now is spiritual endurance. You're not just entering a new chapter, you're stepping into the reason you were born. And that kind of destiny can't be carried by the distracted version of you. So God is issuing a call today, not to the you you've been pretending to be, but to the real you. The one who knows how to war in silence and win with worship. The one who is surrendered, steadfast, and spiritually strategic. That's the version your next season demands. No more delay. No more waiting for the right time. God says, this ends now, the hesitation, the inconsistency, because it's time for the real you to rise. And once you do, doors will open that you didn't knock on. Connections will come that you didn't chase. Provision will arrive that you didn't ask for. Chapter 7, Obedience is your escape route to breakthrough. Chosen one, you've been praying. You've been fasting. You've been weeping in the midnight hour, asking God to shift something. And now God is saying, the shift is already in motion. It's your obedience that activates it. You've asked for open doors, for clarity, for confirmation. This is not just another message, this is heaven's green light. Not through louder prayers, not through more delay, but through radical, quiet, immediate obedience. You've been asking God to remove the weight, but the weight will lift once you move. You've been hoping that staying still was a sign of humility or wisdom. But spiritually, it's become disobedience. Because delay isn't always waiting, sometimes it's rebellion dressed in religious language. God is not ignoring your cries, He's simply waiting on your yes. Not just from your lips, but with your feet. He's already lined up the people, the places, the provision, and the protection. But heaven only funds obedience. You've been feeling stuck, but you're not stuck. You're summoned to walk by faith, summoned to trust God without all the details. This is a Jordan River moment, the waters won't part until your feet hit the edge. This is an Abraham moment, leave the familiar, even if you don't have the full map. This is a Peter moment, step out of the boat when Jesus calls, even if the waves are wild. Your breakthrough isn't behind the door, it's on the other side of obedience. The enemy isn't scared of your gift, he's scared of your obedience. Because a gifted person without obedience is no threat. But an obedient chosen one is unstoppable. The enemy would rather you keep questioning yourself, seeking endless confirmation, because he knows that if you ever fully obey, you'll break bloodline patterns and walk into generational blessing. God doesn't need you to be perfect, He just needs your yes, your raw, uncomfortable, faith-filled yes. Chosen one, this is not the hour to hesitate. This is the divine moment where obedience becomes your escape route, escape from the stagnation, escape from the unnecessary delays, escape from the confusion. God has been quiet lately, not because He's absent, but because He already gave the last instruction. This is not a test of knowledge, but a test of trust. Can you move without needing to understand everything? Obedience is what makes heaven move for you. It's the key that unlocks favor, clarity, access, and divine momentum. You don't need to figure everything out, you just need to follow.